I'm Gerald Miles. I'm an organic farmer in Kairis Organic Farm, just 4 miles up the coast from St David's, and we've got a community project on the farm, a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, called COCA, where we supply vegetables to local people around this farm from here to St David's. We've got 3 generations that are living on the farm at the moment. We've got 3 of our sons living here, and we've got 5 of our grandchildren, which is wonderful. It's the ideal home, ideal family farm, where all of us are living together in harmony with nature. One of the main things we've got on the farm which brings income to the farm is a bed and breakfast, which is the main economy that keeps the farm going. And this area is dependent on tourism. So because farming doesn't give enough of an income, our dependency on tourism is primary in sustaining life on this farm.
Jackie, I'm Graham Perkins. I'm sort of farmer and businessman from St David's area. I've lived in the area all my life, and my family have. And I'm very lucky that even 3 of my 4 children live in the area, work in the area, and some of the grandchildren do now. The family go back to 1528, so we're well established in the area, as I think you are.
Yeah, I think we're in competition on the timeline.
Absolutely. What I think is so wrong is that building a Premier Inn with its nature, its ethos of coming in, procurement will be all done outside the area. They'll be bringing in all their laundry, their food. Nothing will be purchased locally. That's in stark contrast with the local businesses who by and large tend to buy locally whenever they can. Any profits they make are usually spent locally as well.
My name's Steve Pryor. I grew up in Trevine in the village shop which my mother ran. My father's a builder. I went through the schools here, Ysgol Sant, then Pembrokeshire College, and then moved away to university. Everything is locally sourced, all of our food. We make everything. We make the bread, we make the granola, we make the jams, we make the marmalade, make Glamorgan sausages. You know, we make everything here, and all our meat is bought locally, all our veg is bought locally. The milkman is local. It's more expensive. Could get it cheaper in the supermarket, but that's not the point. Melon Gwynthrows, Solver and Mill Rug. All the slate was bought locally. All the wood was machined by my dad. Even all the tradespeople, all local.
My name is Guy Dinmore. I'm a journalist. Began in journalism about 40 years ago. I grew up in South Wales and spent most of my life outside the country. I was travelling around the world. And just over a year ago I decided to come back to Britain. In fact, my last posting was in Asia. I wasn't sure where to live, and I decided to come to St David's because this is where I spent a lot of my childhood on holiday. And I loved it for its unique character, the history of the place, the natural beauty, and the people, and I've really been very happy here. So when I first heard about Premier Inn coming here nearly a year ago, I responded in 2 ways. First, as a local resident, I was very shocked, and then I responded according to my background as a journalist. So I decided to do a lot of research into what would be the impact of a Premier Inn on St David's. So I began, in fact, writing articles about this for the Financial Times and other places. And I started asking Premier Inn a lot of questions about how they operate, what they do, what is their impact on the economy. And I didn't just take their claims at face value. I started doing my own research into what really has happened in other places, for example, in Haverfordwest. And then I moved from there, gathering my material.
And what did you find in Haverfordwest?
Well, Haverfordwest was very interesting because Premier Inn opened there just over a couple of years ago. And of course, they claim that, you know, they bring extra jobs and they boost the economy. My experience talking to owners and managers of 6 hotels was quite the opposite. For example, in one guest house, rather a big guest house with 10 rooms, the owner told me that in the first year of Premier Inn being in Haverfordwest, he had to lay off 2 of his staff. He lost a quarter of his business. And this is very interesting, he stopped buying produce locally because it was cheaper for him to obviously go to Aldi's or Lidl's and buy his produce there rather than at the local butchers and bakers. And this was the pattern I found in all the hotels and guest house owners that I interviewed in Haverfordwest. All of them said they had lost a substantial amount of business to Premier Inn.
Well, I'm Morgan Miles. I live in Croesgoch. I work at the pub at the Sloop in Porthcawl. I feel that Premier Inn is not for St David's. There are several reasons really. One is you're not actually putting something there that's needed. What you're doing is you're putting something there that is going to take away from us, if you like, from the people of St David's. But Premier Inns isn't going to help the people of St David's in any way, because it's not as if the people of St David's are going to go to this Premier Inn and stay. It's going to bring people in which would be here anyway. So if they are a little bit cheaper, which I find terrible that people like that can build something like that in St David's, drop their prices and take away from the people who are actually doing it now. And when you think of St David's, there's the City Inn, there's the Grove, there's the Cross Inn, there's Warple Court. So there's 4 there, plus the little ones that are about.
Hello, my name's Arnold Borman. I was born in St David's. I work in the tourist industry by taking boat trips around. My concerns about the Premier Inn are one, that it's going to be an eyesore. My other concern is that it is providing a facility that is not actually required in the area. I've never known a lack of accommodation in St David's, all the surrounding area.
And that's the frustrating thing. It'll come down to every time when you look for accommodation in St David's, it'll be Premier Inn. The B&Bs and the small hotels around here have got no, they can't begin to battle against that. And I tell you what, Jackie, I've yet to hear of anybody in the summertime who has failed to find accommodation. We've had new accommodation opening up, nice small hotels. There's Torreval Inn, Penrue, there are bunk houses now, there are new B&Bs that are opened. There are a growing number of accommodations here. What we don't want is one massive unit which will have enough bed spaces to equal what is already in St David's.
Because I work in the pub, I've yet to hear anybody coming in and say, oh, we couldn't find anywhere in St David's to stay. I've never heard anybody say that. You know, lots of people stay there, but I've never heard anybody come in and say, oh, we went around St David's everywhere, we couldn't find a place to stay. There's always places there to stay.
And how long have you worked in the Sloop?
Well, I've been part of the pub for about 50 years, but I've been there, gone away, and then come back again. And this time I've been there about 18 years.
So in all that time you've never heard anyone say?
No. I've never heard anybody say that they can't find a place in St David's.
No.
No.
But I did email Premier Inn several several months ago asking them exactly how many deliveries would be made to Premier Inn, taking into account that, as they say, they buy nothing locally. And the figures they gave me amount to 468 trucks a year, delivering food, drink and linen. They won't say where those trucks come from. They do say that they will come from depots in the area. The nearest depot I can find from their Swiss-based logistics supplier is Swansea. So a lot of the trucks will come from Swansea, but of course the goods that are being delivered, the sausages, the bacon, the eggs, the milk and the bread, will come from far further afield, possibly from outside Britain. On top of the 468 trucks delivering food, drink and linen to the hotel every year, the hotel application says 177 trips a day will be made by guests staying there.
We're talking about a massive carbon footprint.
Well, we probably are. And this gets to the crux of the issue. Premier Inn claim that they will bring 44,000 additional visitors to Pembrokeshire every year through this hotel in St David's. Now, I don't believe that claim is true. As I've just argued, I think a lot of the people staying in Premier Inn will be visitors who would have stayed in St David's and another bed and breakfast anyway. But let's take for a moment the idea that they are correct, that Premier Inn will bring 44,000 extra visitors to St David's, or to Pembrokeshire as they put it, every year. This is a phenomenal number of people. It is not sustainable for a small community like ours to have an extra 44,000 people a year. Mass tourism, I do not believe, is the future for St David's. We are not Cornwall. This place cannot sustain that number of people. We need families who live here, families who work here. And with the spread of broadband, with more technology, it is possible. St David's can have a future without mass tourism and brands like Premier Inn stamping out the individual character that this city is so famous for.
My name's Jerome Flynn. I've been coming to Pembrokeshire and St David's, this beautiful area, since I was 7 with my family. We very soon fell in love with it. And I've owned, my home has been here for 20 years. I'm an actor. For some of the year, I bought an old farm. I've done up a lot of the buildings, and we have a small business here, and we rent out cottages. If we're going to make this world and this country and this world a sustainable place and a happy place for us to live, we know that we have to return to local infrastructure and local business and community-based projects. That's a given. If we keep going out to the large corporates that don't have an interest in local community and sustainability, well, the result is the desperate situation we have now, where there's an environmental breakdown and we're not able to sustain our lifestyles as we are.
They've calculated, they've put in their application that there are going to be 44,620 extra people coming into St David's through the Premier Inn. What I feel very strongly about is, well, two aspects. One, if it was so easy to attract an extra 44,000 people plus into the area, then why haven't the Wales Tourist Board managed it? Why haven't Pembrokeshire Tourism Association managed it? Why haven't Pembrokeshire County Council managed to attract them if it's so easy to pull people in? And if there really are going to be 44,620 extra people, why aren't we as a community harnessing that, allowing small businesses to actually go into bed and breakfast, to build more bunk houses, to have a mix of accommodation as there already is, and to expand that and allow small businesses, local people to benefit, rather than having all this income that's supposed to be coming in from these people being paid out and taken out of the county by Premier Inn.
They're now talking about having 42 covers. So what would that do to the existing cafes?
Well, I think that the actual covers of how they're going to feed these 44,620 people is another issue. They're staying in the hotel. None of that produce is going to be coming from the local community, local area, local farmers, local butchers, grocers. all of that food is going to be bought in from outside the area, no benefit to local businesses at all. I think this is really overlooked, and when you think that this, the strength of the Premier Inn, through their marketing, through the, as many people do now, book through the internet, the strength of Premier Inn are going to mean that they're going to be top of the search for accommodation in St David's, and people are going to automatically go there. That's going to result in not the extra 44,000 people, but the people, a lot of the people who are already coming into the area, going to Premier Inn instead of perhaps searching a little bit harder and finding a bed and breakfast or other accommodation.
The problem with Premier Inn is when they come here, how many of the visitors who stay there would have stayed in alternative bed and breakfasts in St David's, and they're just changing location, and how many are completely new to the area? Premier Inn say they will only take 10% away of the existing business. The reality is that Premier Inn will take large amounts of business from existing hotels and existing bed and breakfasts. They will be the biggest hotel in St David's by a factor of 3. They have 63 rooms. The biggest hotels in St David's at the moment have about 20 rooms. They will have a restaurant with about 40 places. That must be one of the biggest restaurants in St David's. So they will take away existing businesses. The effect, as has happened in Haverfordwest, will be that bed and breakfasts will probably close down because they cannot compete with Premier Inn. And slowly, the economy of St David's will be hollowed out. The danger being that Premier Inn, of course, will just be the start of the trend. After Premier Inn, once perhaps one or two of the other hotels close down or the pubs close down, then the other chains will move in.
So we're talking about serious community displacement, family displacement.
Yes, I think so. I think in a few years' time you would see fewer families staying in St David's because of Premier Inn.
We have an opportunity locally with the community and national parks to do something extraordinary here and protect the future generations of the people who live here. My kids, it's not necessarily about me, it's about my children and their children, because I know for a fact they will want to come back here, as I did. And the generations of tourists who come here still want to come back here. Generations.
I'm Hayley Stevens. I was born and brought up in St David's. I moved away a few years ago to train as a paramedic, and once I finished my training I moved back to Pembrokeshire as I always wanted to. A lot of my friends have all moved back as well to bring up their children. Good place to bring up children, and I think everyone wants to emulate the childhood they had. Moving back, a lot of my friends have started up their own businesses, some in catering, some in accommodation. I think Premier Inn is the beginning of a landslide, and it's going to ruin the community.
It's a very delicate balance right now. There's only not just enough children. We've had to fight for the school. There's only just enough children going to the school to make it viable. And the businesses that are relying on accommodation that could be so adversely affected are going to affect the families of local people who all of a sudden might be having to, we're thinking, well, I can't stay. I'm going to go off. I have to go somewhere else and work. And as soon as that happens, so it's antithetical to the whole idea of trying to supplying housing for local people, because there's very likely to be less local people able to live here if a Premier Inn, the effect of and the knock-on effects of the Premier Inn, if that happens. There's so much I love about this area, but its uniqueness, I think, is what draws me to it. There's something about this peninsula and St David's itself. It has managed to retain a kind of signature. In my mind, it's like a sacred signature. It's a sacred holy city. It's an extraordinary city because it's so small. But it's retained its character in a way that very few towns and cities have. And it's part of why I love it so much. It hasn't been taken over by any of the big multinationals or corporates that are invading so much of our beautiful city spaces.
I am Ailsa Buick and I grew up here, went to the local school, and I have 2 children who were also born here, and St David's is a special place to us. There are many concerns. There's one being the kind of impact that the Premier Inn, a new build Premier Inn, would have in the environment and in the landscape. The other one is the kind of social and economic impact that the hotel will have on this kind of really special community, not just now but also in the future. And I think as a community we are really striving to protect that, and I think that the decisions that we make now as a community are really important for the future. If we say yes to a Premier Inn coming now and allow it to happen, then that's going to be really difficult to retract.
They say they will create 21 jobs. But when you ask them what exactly are these 21 jobs, they won't tell you. They will say it's a mixture of management, of housekeepers, which is a euphemism for cleaners, and of course there will be some bar and restaurant staff. What they won't tell you is that in fact there probably will only be 1 manager, perhaps 2 receptionists, and the bulk of those jobs will be cleaners, low-paid cleaners. They pay the national minimum wage. Actually, if you look at the statistics, Pembrokeshire does not have a serious employment problem. We have a higher employment rate, meaning more people in work, than the average in Wales and also the average in Britain. The problem for Pembrokeshire is really decent jobs, well-paid jobs, technical jobs, jobs that require qualifications and education. And cleaning a Premier Inn hotel is not going to provide that.
That the promise of 20 full-time equivalent jobs, which won't be year-round, or if they are year-round, they'll be transported off to other Premier Inns to work. I think that is clouding the issue to many people, or to a number of people in the community, and that jobs is being put first. But these will be low-paid jobs, and we all know that the hotels in the area already have a great problem in filling the vacancies that they have in the summer, particularly. There are many jobs available which they can't fill.
I am very unconfident that they will be able to find enough people to come here through the winter to justify employing 20 people all year round.
I'm sure an argument for Premier Inn would be that it would provide the locals with jobs and give back to the community that way. I think the argument against that is, I'm 29, there's not many people my age who grew up in St David's who aspired to work in Premier Inn for minimum wage and seasonal work, and given that most of them have families or have 1 working parent, they certainly couldn't afford to either.
So in the course of my reporting in St David's, I interviewed a number of owners of guest houses and bed and breakfasts. I came across one couple. They moved to St David's about 20 years ago. Young entrepreneurs, they set up a guest house. They had children here. They invested their whole life in St David's. They said they wouldn't repeat that experience now if a Premier Inn was in St David's. They were ready to take that risk 20 years ago of setting up a home, setting up a family and a business because there was not a big chain hotel here. In the future, they reckon people like them will not come and take that risk bringing their families to St David's to try and set up a business in the catering and bed and breakfast sector. If a Premier Inn is already here, they just won't be able to compete.
I don't know, we can have a dream or an image for what could happen. What do I want my children to have? What facilities do I want my children to have in St David's for the future? And that would be, you know, places for them to have workshops, to kind of have a creative space to build their careers or their lifestyle or whatever in a sustainable way in their community, in a way that's kind of wholehearted and wholesome and will enrich themselves and their community and the lives of people who come and visit St David's. You know, that St David's becomes this kind of like amazing hub with, you know, that's not kind of run of the mill. It's this incredible place, and it's a real kind of reflection of the incredible community that we are.
I think there's been the idea that a Premier Inn would help to bring in housing. There's been an idea that it would help to bring in affordable housing, which has proved to be only an idea, and we know that that's not the case now. And the Pembrokeshire Housing Association have said they don't need Premier Inn to make the housing. And in fact, the plot where the Premier Inn wants to go would be an ideal plot for us to be able to do something with the Community Land Trust together, something very exciting.
What do you think is going to happen to all these businesses?
I would think that they would go out of business, to be quite honest with you. And if they don't go out of business, they will be very lucky to survive. We have local shops, we have local facilities, we have local hotels which are owner run. And I think that is to be absolutely commended. We do have an identity, a very non-commercial identity. And I think that should be kept in place. They're going to ruin an area by indiscriminate building.
But the visual impact and effect on the area is going to be enormous. Every road you take looking in towards St David's, every path, everywhere you look, you're going to see this building, which is going to be the highest building, taking into account the ground level, in St David's. It'll be the tallest building in St David's, and will stand out way above anything else.
It's going to change the nature of the place. So it actually might put people off from coming here. It would displace the visitors we already get. It would change St David's. So people saying, well, I love coming here because it's how Cornwall used to be. You know, that was one of the arguments for, is that we needed to come up to speed with how Cornwall is now. That's not why we don't want that. And I'm sure the local people of Cornwall are in mourning for the community there.
Yes, I'm sure they are.
They are. I mean, every time I walk to St David's across the coast, it's like a pilgrimage. And what would the pilgrims think? What would St David think? It's hard to imagine him saying, yeah, we need to progress and get in some corporates around here, and he would be doing everything he can. People aren't just going to lie down and let this happen. Whose is it if it's not the people who live here? Who's actually in it? Whose is it to protect and fight for?
Having Premier Inn here won't help the economy of the area at all, and it's just for investment and to benefit their shareholders. Premier Inn coming here is a threat that'll change our lives and will change the lifestyle and lives in St David's. You may not think it now, but it will. And you don't realise it until it happens. Dal ar I beth sy'n arddwyn I ti. Hold on to what is dear to you.
Yes.
Otherwise you wouldn't, definitely don't put it into...
Just the hand went up.
No, no.